This is Digital Anarchist at RSA Conference 2019.
Hi, once again, Charlene O'Hanlon here with Digital Anarchist, Security Boulevard, DevOps.com, Container Journal, and the entire Media Ops brand. We are here at RSA Conference 2019, and I believe this is day 3, but I've lost track of time, so I could be wrong about that. Having lots of good conversations, and our next guests here today are with Data Theorem. Sorry about that. I got a blank there. To my immediate right is Himanshu Dwivedi, who's the CEO, and to his right is Dooley, who is the COO. So, gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me today.
No problem. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Awesome. How are you liking the show so far?
It's good. It gets bigger every year. Some familiar faces, new faces, but I love it. It just shows how the industry is growing and hopefully getting better year over year.
Yeah. I'm always amazed at, as much as things change, they stay the same.
Yeah, that's so true with security, right?
Yeah, exactly. But it's always good to come here.
Yeah.
And it looks like we have a huge crowd coming in now, but I understand you guys have some news from the show.
Yeah. So a few things. So the company's background is in mobile app security, but essentially we launched a product directly on the server side of all these mobile apps, which is of course APIs, right? And so like every young startup, we decided we're going to stay focused and be a mobile company, and like every young startup, our customers said, no, you got to do more. And we said no for a lot of years, and then Doug came on and made the right decision, saying, all the data, the big data breaches that we see are really on the server side. They're in the cloud, and they're REST APIs. And that part of the market is underserved a little bit because people are still on this SQL injection hangover, where that was the term that when I was younger, made a lot of money off of it, to be quite honest. But as the data breaches moved away from SQL into REST APIs, there wasn't a solution or a product or a tool to essentially to help customers fill that gap. And that's why we've launched an API security product that Doug can probably talk a little bit more about.
Yeah, so that's really the big news is API Discover and API Inspector, 2 new offerings that our customers are pretty excited about. We've been lucky enough to have some amazing customers, particularly who are strong in DevOps, Netflix in particular. And so when Himanshu invited me about 4 years ago to his first advisory board meeting, I was a VC at the time, investing in all kinds of different kinds of security companies, but I was just truly blown away about what Data Theorem was doing. And so one of their big important customers, Netflix, the leader of their security team, was really like, guys, this stuff that you guys have done on mobile is really breakthrough, but we could use something just like this purely on API. And that was sort of the seed that was planted maybe 3-4 years ago. And sure enough, you could argue Netflix tends to be way ahead of the market when it comes to DevOps related security problems. But sometimes they're so far ahead they have problems that no one else has. But in this particular case, it turned out, I think they were right, their insights were right, that meaning every size company, big or small, building modern software is running into this issue where they don't even know about every single API that's being created, particularly on an ephemeral infrastructure. So, as your traffic grows, as an application gets really popular, your APIs are spread like crazy all over the world. And then when the application becomes less popular or it's just a quiet part of the day, your footprint is relatively small. And so there weren't really good security products that understood how to deal with that continuous nature. And that's really sort of the genesis of why we did API Discover and then API Inspect.
It's kind of like the dirty secret of the API economy, right?
Yes.
All of a sudden you've got too many APIs, you can't manage them all, and you certainly can't keep track of them all. So that's really interesting. So you guys have a decidedly DevOps bent to your company then. It's really kind of part of the foundation. Yeah.
It's not because it's the trendy word to use these days. My background in security started in the mid-90s. Back then, you're either a crypto person or a young person doing silly things on the internet.
Right.
And I was the latter. And then I did a couple startups, and I remember being very proud when I would find like SQL injection attacks, and very proud when I would compromise all these data sets. And then I grew up and I realized, like, hey, the problem is not the number of, like, people are not going around saying, hey, we need to find more issues. They're like, we need to find more solutions. And then slowly the industry kind of woke up saying, well, the developers are the one who have the solutions. Security people like me didn't really give them enough tools to, like, I would show them how we would break things and thought, oh, that's enough. But developers are the ones who have to fix things. So security kind of woke up to this DevOps model, which has been around for developers for a while, and saying, hey, we're here to fix and release, and we're going to do that 30 times a day, right? Some of our customers, they literally release 30 times a day and not a waterfall method. And so when the company started, we were like, we're going to be part of the solution. We're not going to pound our chest and say how many big, large data breaches that we identified before it became public. We're going to talk about how many things we prevented, and it's going straight to the developer, for the developer, and not necessarily security dashboards, but developer plugins, essentially. And so that's kind of where we...
All right, great. So it almost sounds like you guys were ahead of the curve on the DevSecOps, the adoption.
Maybe just because we made a lot of mistakes probably in our previous lives, where we would find all these great things and we would come back, weeks later or months later, sometimes years later, and nothing would be fixed. We're like, why is it not happening? And then, I got older and I'm like, okay, we're clearly telling a developer a security story, right? It's not going to work. And so I think with all those mistakes that I personally made, I realized, like, okay, if we really want to help CSOs, CISOs out there, we have to be part of the solution, and part of the solution is speaking the same language of the people who fix the problem.
Well said. Well said. So, what are your next moves for you guys? What are you thinking about?
Well, I mean, there's a few things. I think the biggest thing right now is, as we take our mobile product, we take our API product, the next big thing, in our humble opinion, which is cheaper, faster, and better for all developers, is serverless, right? When you talk about serverless, talk about Lambda, talk about cloud functions, talk about Azure functions. It's really what the cloud was about 5-6 years ago. CFOs will love it. Costs will go down. Performance will increase. Developers will get so much more done. We see it in our company. People are using Google functions or cloud functions way ahead of time. And so when you have that, of course, there needs to be a security around that. So we have REST APIs and containers. Actually, Doug, you have a great stat that you might want to share about the growth of serverless compared to containers.
Yeah. So one of the things that we noticed, so in 2017, Docker was really coming on the scene, and people were moving everything to a container, and that was sort of the buzzword of the day. But it was really about making software easier to reuse and easier to troubleshoot faster across lots of different kind of Linux environments. And so in 2017, Amazon released a stat that 24% of their customer base was using Docker. But in that same year, 23.5% of their customer base was using Lambda. And Lambda, like, nobody had heard of really 4 years ago because it was first introduced. And the idea was that, look, when you build a container and you have hundreds of containers spinning up across all these different availability zones, then orchestration layer had to kind of come and puppeteer all of this stuff. And so then Kubernetes got born out of Google. But what, at the end of the day, developer ultimately doesn't care about any of this. They would rather not know how much infrastructure you have to spin up and spin down in order to make the app run well. And so when Amazon first introduced Lambda, about 4 years ago, it's incredible how much adoption has gained in just 4 years, because it's kind of the easy button on all the stuff that we've been talking about, containers and orchestration and Kubernetes, all these things. And so what we've noticed is, even in our own environment, some of our engineers have been building pretty complex, multi-tenant, broken down into large microservices environments. And we were also kind of going through this journey of, like, what does it take to make this thing scale for all of our customers? And a few of our engineers did a few experiments, which was like, look, we're going to just write it on Google Cloud Function and see what happens. The costs drop, the scaling goes way up, and the performance maintained. And so when we saw that, if you can make, and it took way less code. So if it takes less code to do the same thing at equally better scale at lower cost, we're like, this is going to be a trend that we're going to see over the next 5 to 10 years, where it's going to be going through everybody's software development stack. Now, as a security person, you've been used to having those servers to hook all your agents into, to hook all your telemetry, to get all this data out, to understand where's the business risk. Once the infrastructure becomes ephemeral and evaporates from you, there's no server to hook onto. It's serverless. So this is the opportunity I think we really have to provide some new innovation to the market. and ultimately just help our customers deal with their data risk. If we really take a step back, we're an application security company that really focuses on data, and give that customer a data-informed decision to decide, like, are they going to continue this or change it or fix it? At the end of the day, it's a data-driven decision, and that's really what Data Theorem is all about.
All right, great. Well, I wish you guys the best of luck. It sounds like a great technology, and I know as serverless ramps up and just container security in general, there's a lot floating around in that area these days. So we'll keep our eye on that as well. But gentlemen, thank you very much for stopping by and talking to me about the technology and your insights, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
This is Digital Anarchist.